My wife dumped me for her coworker, and now she wants me back? No thanks. Alright, buckle up because I need to get this off my chest. It's honestly crazy that I'm even here, writing this, but Reddit feels like the only place where I can say it all without anyone around me judging me. Here's my story, the full, unfiltered version. I'm a 29-year-old guy, let's call me Jake, and for 5 years, I was married to Amy, 28. We met in college, fell in love, or so I thought, and got married right after we graduated. At first, it was everything I imagined. We were happy, we were building a life together, and I was excited for the future. Life was good, at least for me. Amy, though? She always had this weird itch, like she was constantly searching for something more, something that I couldn't even begin to understand. She'd talk about how she felt like she was missing out on some magical experience. Honestly, I didn't know what that even meant. But looking back, I should have seen it coming when she started spending more time talking about her coworker, Brad, 32. Brad was one of those guys who just oozes charm but in the most obnoxious way possible. The kind of guy who always takes the center of attention at office parties, makes everything about him, and somehow gets away with doing the bare minimum. Amy couldn't stop talking about him, how deep he was, how he really got her, and how he had this unique perspective on life. Let me make one thing clear, this guy was a walking red flag, but Amy didn't see it. To her, he was some kind of knight in shining armor. Here's the kicker, Brad was married to Sandra, 30. And from what I later learned, Sandra was already dealing with Brad's BS long before Amy came into the picture. At first, I brushed it off. I thought, everyone has work friends, right? But when she started dressing up more for work, coming home later, and most importantly acting cold and distant, I should have trusted my instincts. The woman I loved was slipping away, and I couldn't even tell how or why. And then came the day. We need to talk, she said, and my stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you can tell the world is about to change? I had that gut feeling. She sat me down, and what came next shook me to my core. Amy told me she'd found a connection with Brad that she'd never felt with me. She said that our relationship had become stale, and she wanted more. But here's the real gut punch, she framed it like I was the one holding her back from living her best life. She wanted to be with Brad, and as far as she was concerned, I wasn't part of the plan anymore. She left. In less than a week, she was living with Brad. I was devastated. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to cover it. The woman I loved, who I thought loved me, threw away everything for this guy she barely knew. And then I found out that Brad wasn't even faithful to her. Surprise, surprise. Amy wasn't the first woman he'd connected with. No, he was a serial cheater, and she was just the latest victim. It felt like a slap in the face. I was left to pick up the pieces, while Sandra, Brad's wife, was also left devastated. Apparently, Brad didn't even have the decency to tell her he was leaving. She found out through a string of texts and phone calls from mutual friends. I can't imagine how she felt, but I did feel a little better knowing I wasn't alone in this mess. I spent the next 6 months slowly rebuilding myself. Therapy helped, and I spent more time with my friends. They told me Amy was the villain in this story, that I deserved better, and that she'd regret this one day. At first, I didn't believe them, but spoiler alert, they were right. I started focusing on myself. The gym became a refuge, and I even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but it felt good to put myself out there again. And then, just when I thought I was moving on, Amy texted me. Her message was a sad mix of regret and nostalgia, like she thought she could just walk back into my life. Hey, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Can we talk? I wanted to delete the message, but something in me wanted to hear her out. I agreed to meet up, thinking, why not? I'm not with her anymore, so this won't hurt. We met at a coffee shop, and when I saw her, it was like seeing a completely different person. She didn't have that spark anymore. Instead, she looked worn out, tired, like she was carrying the weight of her own bad decisions. She launched into a sob story about how Brad wasn't the guy she thought he was. Turns out, Brad was a disaster. Lazy, selfish, and, of course, a cheater. He had been unfaithful to her with multiple women co-workers, a bartender, and it wasn't just physical. He had a gambling problem, too, and a mountain of debt that Sandra had been hiding for years. Now that Sandra was out of the picture, Amy was left to pick up the mess. And then, the punchline, she said she missed me. Missed us. She realized I was the best thing that ever happened to her. She said she admired how strong I had been through all of this. Yeah, right. You can't burn a bridge, blow up my life, and then act like you're impressed by. Yes, no, I said. You made your choice, Amy. You didn't just leave me, you destroyed everything we had. You burned it to the ground, and you don't get to come back just because your backup plan failed. It doesn't work like that. Her eyes welled up with tears. She begged, said she was so sorry and that she'd do anything to make it up to me. But here's the truth, I didn't want her back. The love I once had for her was gone. It died when she made that choice to walk away. And as much as it hurt back then, I'm glad she's out of my life. I told her I hope she found whatever it was she was looking for, but it wouldn't be with me. I paid for my coffee, stood up, and left. That was the end of it. A week later, I bumped into Sandra. I was at a park, just enjoying the quiet, when I saw her sitting on a bench, reading a book. She looked so composed, so at peace, that it was hard to believe she had been dragged through the same mess I had. We ended up talking, and honestly, it felt good to talk to someone who knew what it was like to deal with Brad. We grabbed coffee together and spent hours laughing about how ridiculous our exes were. Turns out, Sandra is an incredible person. Funny, smart, resilient. It was nice to connect with someone who understood loyalty and honesty, two things that Brad and Amy seemed to forget about. We've been hanging out more, and while it's still too early to call it anything serious, I'm just enjoying the friendship for now. The friend who knew everything. Oh, and let's talk about Dave. This guy, a so-called friend of mine, knew about Amy and Brad before I did. He claimed he didn't want to get involved, but after Amy left me, he started telling me all these stories about how they'd been flirting at work parties for months. Thanks for nothing, Dave. Needless to say, I've been re-evaluating my friendships ever since. Amy has been trying to reach out ever since I told her no. Texts, calls, voicemails. I blocked her on everything, and to be honest, I don't care what she has to say anymore. Some of our mutual friends think I'm being too harsh, but the people who truly know me? They understand why I did what I did. So here's where I stand now. If you've ever been in a situation like this, let me tell you, you deserve better. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not enough. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Amy showed me exactly who she was, and I'm better off without her. I'm moving forward, stronger than ever, and the future looks a hell of a lot better without her in it. As for Amy? I hope she finds whatever she's searching for. But it's not going to be with me. I've learned my lesson, and I'm finally at peace with it. It's been a few months since I last shared my story, and while I've been moving forward with my life, I've heard bits and pieces about what's been happening with Amy. To be honest, I wasn't looking for updates on her. But you know how it is, mutual friends talk, and sometimes, news has a way of finding you whether you want it to or not. Let's just say, things haven't exactly gone well for her. After I shut Amy down and told her I wasn't interested in getting back together, she tried to make things work with Brad for a little while longer. Big mistake. Turns out, Brad's charm is like a cheap cologne, overwhelming at first, but it fades quickly and leaves behind nothing but a bad smell. From what I heard, Brad didn't just cheat on her, he cheated brazenly. One of their coworkers caught him making out with someone else in the office parking lot. When Amy confronted him, he shrugged it off like it was no big deal. You knew who I was when you got with me, he reportedly told her. Ouch. That wasn't the worst of it, though. Remember Brad's gambling problem? Well, it spiraled even further out of control. He blew through his savings and then started borrowing money from Amy. She apparently took out a loan to help him get back on his feet. Predictably, he didn't use the money responsibly, and now Amy is stuck paying off his debt. Last I heard, Brad dumped her for another coworker, someone younger and less likely to question his antics. After Brad left her, Amy tried to reconnect with some of the friends she had distanced herself from during their relationship. Here's the thing, though, people don't forget when you treat them like stepping stones. Most of her friends didn't want anything to do with her anymore. One friend told me that Amy tried to join a girls' night out, and the vibe was so awkward that she ended up leaving early. It's like she's become a ghost in her own social circle, always there but never really welcome. Amy's work life hasn't been much better. She thought she'd have Brad's support at the office, but after their breakup, things got awkward. People started gossiping about their messy relationship, and her reputation took a hit. To make matters worse, Brad moved on so quickly that it made her look like just another notch on his belt. She tried to transfer to a different department, but apparently, word travels fast, and no one was eager to work with her. She ended up leaving the company altogether and is now struggling to find a job that pays what she was making before. Here's where things get even messier. One of our mutual friends told me that Amy tried online dating to put herself back out there. Let's just say, it didn't go well. She ended up meeting a guy who seemed promising at first, but it turned out he was only using her for money, basically Brad 2.0, but worse. He ghosted her after a few months, leaving her even more emotionally and financially drained. In one particularly desperate move, she tried reaching out to Sandra, yes, Sandra, the woman whose life Brad also destroyed. Amy apparently sent her a long message apologizing for everything and asking if they could move past the drama and be friends. Sandra, being the classy person she is, didn't even respond. Honestly, I can't blame her. On my end, life has been pretty great. Sandra and I have been spending more time together, and while we're still taking things slow, it feels good to be with someone who values honesty and loyalty. She's helped me see that I deserve better, and I'm grateful for that every day. I've also been focusing on my career, and I recently got a promotion at work. My friends and family have been incredibly supportive, and I finally feel like I'm back on solid ground. As for Amy? I don't wish her any harm, but I also don't feel sorry for her. She made her choices, and now she's dealing with the consequences. If nothing else, her story serves as a reminder, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes, it's just fake turf that falls apart the moment you step on it. To anyone reading this, if you've ever been in a similar situation, take it from me, let them go. Focus on yourself, surround yourself with good people, and trust that life has better things in store for you. I'm living proof that you can come out stronger on the other side. My wife left me for her dream guy, and now she's begging to come back. Alright, here we go. This is the story of how I, 30M, went from being a devoted husband to a single guy rebuilding his life and why I'm better off for it. Strap in, because it's a wild ride, with a few twists and turns along the way. I married Jessica, 28F, 7 years ago. We met through mutual friends, and she was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, and adventurous. We hit it off instantly, and within a year, we were walking down the aisle. Our life was good, at least, that's what I thought. Jessica, however, always had this restless energy. She was the kind of person who needed excitement, spontaneity, and, apparently, validation from anyone who gave her attention. Early in our marriage, I thought it was cute, maybe even endearing. She was always looking for the next big thing, a new hobby, a new friend group, a new vacation spot. Little did I know that new would eventually include a new man. Enter Ethan, 34M, the guy Jessica met at her gym. Ethan was, let's just say, a walking stereotype. The loud, self-proclaimed alpha male who always had to be the center of attention. He'd post videos of himself lifting weights, giving motivational speeches about hustle culture, and, of course, shirtless selfies. Jessica started talking about Ethan a lot, how he was so driven, how he understood the grind, and how he was a real go-getter. At first, I laughed it off. I mean, come on. Ethan? Really? But then she started going to the gym more often. Staying late. Texting someone all the time. You don't have to be a genius to figure out what was happening. The "we need to talk" moment. One evening, Jessica sat me down and said those dreaded 4 words, "we need to talk." She told me she felt trapped in our marriage and that Ethan had opened her eyes to what she was missing in life. She said she wanted to find herself and couldn't do that with me. I asked her if she was leaving me for Ethan, and she denied it at first. But within a week, she moved out and into Ethan's place. It hurt. A lot. But what hurt even more was how quickly she turned our mutual friends against me. Suddenly, I was the boring husband who couldn't keep up with her ambition. Jessica painted herself as the brave woman taking a leap of faith, and I was the anchor weighing her down. Fast forward 6 months, and Jessica's dream guy turned out to be more of a nightmare. Ethan, as it turns out, was great at selling himself but terrible at delivering on any of his promises. He was always broke, borrowing money from Jessica to fund his side hustles that never went anywhere. He also had a massive ego and treated Jessica like she was just another fan in his audience. One of my friends, Mark, who stayed loyal to me, told me that Jessica was already venting about Ethan to mutual friends. Apparently, the excitement wore off quickly when she realized he was all talk and no substance. But let's pause here for a side story about Mark, because this is where things get interesting. Side mini-story, Mark's Dilemma. Mark had been one of my best friends since college, and he had his own drama brewing. He'd been dating Sophie, 26F, for a couple of years, but their relationship was rocky. Sophie was sweet, but she had a bad habit of taking her frustrations out on Mark. She'd get upset over small things, like him being 5 minutes late to dinner or forgetting to text her during his lunch break. One night, Mark came to me looking absolutely defeated. Sophie had blown up on him because he had forgotten her favorite brand of ice cream while grocery shopping. I told him, "Mark, you deserve someone who doesn't treat you like a punching bag." He nodded but looked unconvinced. Over time, Mark started standing up for himself more. He and Sophie had a long, heart-to-heart conversation where he laid everything out. To her credit, Sophie actually listened. She admitted she'd been taking her own insecurities out on him and promised to work on herself. They're still together now, and from what I can tell, their relationship is stronger than ever. Jessica's pathetic return. Back to Jessica. After about 9 months of living with Ethan, she reached out to me. She started with a generic, "Hey, I've been thinking about you," but quickly moved into a full-blown sob story. She admitted Ethan wasn't who she thought he was. He'd cheated on her with one of his gym clients and had the audacity to blame her for not being supportive enough. She also confessed that she was struggling financially because Ethan had drained her savings. She said she missed me, missed our life together, and wanted to start over. I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't moved either. The Jessica who left me wasn't the same Jessica I'd fallen in love with. She'd become someone selfish, entitled, and reckless. I told her, "Jessica, I'm glad you've realized what you had, but it's too late. You made your choice, and I've moved on." She cried, begged, and said she'd do anything to fix things, but I stood firm. Karma hits hard. Jessica's life has only gone downhill since then. She had to move back in with her parents because she couldn't afford her rent. She's also burned so many bridges with friends that she's practically a pariah in our old social circle. Meanwhile, Ethan? He's living his best life, well, if you can call it that. He's still posting cringy gym selfies and dating women half his age, leaving a trail of broken hearts and unpaid debts in his wake. As for me, I've been doing great. Therapy helped me work through the pain, and I've been focusing on my career and hobbies. I've also started dating again, and while nothing serious has come of it yet, it feels good to be with people who appreciate me for who I am. Mark and Sophie's story has been a big inspiration for me. Seeing them work through their issues and grow stronger together reminded me that healthy relationships are possible, but only with the right person. Jessica made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. And me? I'm finally free to live the life I deserve. To anyone reading this, remember, don't settle for someone who doesn't see your worth. Life is too short to waste on people who only value you when it's convenient for them. Hey everyone, back again with an update I didn't think I'd need to write. So, after our last encounter, I thought that was it. Jessica was out of my life, and I could finally move on in peace. Well, life had other plans. A mutual friend, Maggie, recently filled me in on what Jessica's been up to, and let's just say, it's a train wreck I can't look away from. Apparently, Jessica tried to get back into the dating scene, but her reputation preceded her. Word about her affair with Ethan spread like wildfire, and potential dates would ghost her the moment they found out. On top of that, her financial situation went from bad to worse. She's working a retail job now, not that there's anything wrong with that, but she's constantly complaining to anyone who'll listen about how unfair life is. Here's the kicker: Ethan's latest business venture, some kind of supplement pyramid scheme, tanked, and Jessica co-signed a loan for it before they broke up. Now she's stuck paying off his debts while he's out there living his gym bro fantasy, hopping from one unsuspecting woman to the next. Speaking of Ethan, Maggie told me his golden boy streak is finally crumbling. One of the women he was stringing along, let's call her Vanessa, found out about his long history of cheating and decided to air all his dirty laundry on social media. She posted screenshots, receipts, and even a video of him denying everything before breaking down in tears when confronted. It went viral, and now Ethan's gym has lost a bunch of clients. Jessica tried to get back at him by joining the exes of Ethan's support group. Yes, that's a real thing now, but even they didn't want her around. One of the other women flat out told her, "You knew what kind of guy he was, and you still went for it. What did you expect?" On a happier note, Mark and Sophie, the couple I mentioned before, have had some big news: they got engaged. Mark popped the question during a weekend getaway, and Sophie said yes. They're genuinely happier than ever, and Sophie's been putting in the work to address her past issues. But here's where it gets interesting. Jessica found out about the engagement and had the nerve to text Mark, saying, "I always thought we had something special." I guess you're happy settling for Sophie. Yeah, you read that right. Mark showed me the text, and we both had a good laugh about it. He blocked her immediately. If you thought Jessica couldn't sink any lower, think again. A few weeks ago, Maggie ran into Jessica at a bar. She was drunk, ranting about how life screwed her over and how good guys like me always abandon her. Maggie told me Jessica even tried to say I was to blame for her downfall because I didn't fight for her. Maggie, being the legend she is, shut her down hard. She told Jessica, "You had a good guy, and you threw him away for a gym rat with the emotional depth of a kiddie pool. Don't blame him for your bad choices." Needless to say, Jessica didn't take it well. My life now is for me, things have been going great. I've been focusing on my career and recently got a promotion. I've also started seeing someone, Rachel, and she's incredible. She's kind, down to earth, and, most importantly, she values honesty and loyalty. We're taking things slow, but it feels different in the best way. I've also been hitting the gym myself, not to chase validation like Ethan, but for my own mental and physical health. It's been a great way to channel my energy and focus on self-improvement. If there's one thing this whole experience has taught me, it's that people don't change unless they want to. Jessica never wanted to change, she just wanted to escape responsibility. And Ethan? Well, his downfall was inevitable. To anyone reading this, if you've ever felt like someone walked all over you and got away with it, trust me, life has a way of evening the score. It might not happen right away, but when it does, it's worth every second of the wait. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster of a story. Here's to moving forward and leaving toxic people in the past where they belong. Cheers.